Alright guys, how's it going? And welcome to the Testosterone channel. So today, in this quick little video, I think we should focus on a bodybuilder, in my mind, one of the greatest that ever lived, and someone that never really got the credit that he deserved, which is one reason that I'm actually making this video, because this is a guy that a lot of people believed was equally as good as Arnold Schwarzenegger, perhaps even a little bit better, at least in some ways. He was absolutely amazing, and you know him probably best from the movie Pumping Iron. He plays second to Arnold in the 1975 Mr. Olympia that took place in Pretoria, South Africa. And yes, the man's name, the bodybuilder's name is Serge Nubret. Let's check him out. So here's the man, Serge Nubret, aka the Black Panther. Nubret was born on October 6, 1938, and unfortunately passed away in 2011 at the age of 72. He had an extremely long bodybuilding career and pretty much competed until the very end. You can see pictures of him in his 60s. He still looked amazing, long after Arnold had sort of gotten out of the game. But Serge Nubret, as you can see, was a bodybuilder for life. Now, the man won a lot of titles, including the 1976 NABBA Mr. Universe. Now, in 1960, he joined the International Federation of Bodybuilders and was declared the world's most muscular man in Montreal. At the time, Arnold Schwarzenegger was only 13 years old, so he was almost a decade older than Arnold. And yes, we will obviously make some comparisons between these two giants. Because in a perfect world, Serge Nubret should have gone down in history as a Mr. Olympia as well, which unfortunately never happened. But I think most bodybuilding enthusiasts in the world will agree that he's definitely an uncrowned Mr. Olympia, because he was absolutely amazing. Now, as mentioned, the man won a lot of titles, including Mr. World and Mr. Olympus in 1977, and another world champion title in 1981 in Geneva. And in 1983, which was 23 years after his first world-class achievement, he became the WABBA world champion in Rome, winning his fifth major title. And at 65 years of age, Nubret offered a very last show to the public during the 2003 World Championship in France. Now, early on, he became the head of the French and European IFBB bodybuilding federations from 1970 to 1975. And yes, we all know him best, as mentioned, from the 1975 docudrama Pumping Iron, where he plays second to Arnold. So what the hell went wrong? Why did he never become a Mr. Olympia? Well, I hate using the word politics, but unfortunately you cannot say the word bodybuilding from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and even later on without also implementing the word politics on a very, very high level. In the 70s, Arnold was running the show, and he was Joe Weider's golden boy and Mr. Olympia, and won 6 titles in the 70s alone. Later on, another one. And in the 1990s, you can pretty much say the same thing about Dorian Yates, that ended up winning 6 titles. And even though he occasionally was injured, I believe Dorian was injured at 2 Mr. Olympia shows, still he ended up winning, even though he was up against other amazing bodybuilders like Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, Sean Ray, and Nasser El Sonbati, that in my mind all should have won at least 1 title. Kevin Levrone probably should have won twice. I would say once to Dorian, and probably also in, I believe it was either 2000 or 2002, when he was the runner-up to Ronnie Coleman. The politics, unfortunately, was so bad, so a lot of these great bodybuilders, some of the greatest that ever lived, simply just decided to step away and say it's just not fair and it's not right. So hasta la vista, baby. And in some ways, you can say the same thing about Serge Nubret in the 1970s. The press conference in the 2001 Mr. Olympia contest was definitely the turning point where it seemed like things were about to change, since several of the bodybuilders openly complained about the politics that had been going on for, at that point, over 30 years. Kevin Levrone was not afraid to speak up.
It has to be a problem somewhere when all the fans are booing. There's a problem every time something's announced. Everybody's booing. The people aren't stupid. They're arguing. But the things that you hear is the show's already locked down. You know who's going to get it.
It was definitely a farce, and it was completely unfair to all the competitors that trained and dieted so hard to step into a show knowing that for 8 years straight Lee Haney had won, followed by 6 years of Dorian Yates and another 8 years of Ronnie Coleman. That's a total of only 3 Mr. Olympia winners in a span of 22 years. Kevin Levrone, that's without a doubt one of the greatest bodybuilders that ever lived, stepped away from bodybuilding just 2 years later, since there was no point in continue pursuing something that was unreachable. Now, the movie Pumping Iron was sort of sold like the big showdown between Arnold and Lou. Arnold being the champion, but Lou Ferrigno being one step behind, trying to take the title from the winner, and that was the big showdown. And the whole movie was sort of a competition between these guys, leading up to the final big showdown at the Mr. Olympia. And the big question, could Lou Ferrigno steal the title or not? However, what actually ended up happening at the show, since Mr. Olympia was still a real show, was that Serge Nubret actually ended up placing second, meaning that Lou Ferrigno placed third, which sort of messed up this whole competition thing, which the filmmakers had planned between Arnold and Ferrigno. It was also a surprise because back in those days you had two Mr. Olympia titles over and under 200 pounds. And Serge Nubret was sort of the surprise because apparently he came in over 200 pounds. So instead of him competing with Franco Colombo and some of the smaller guys, he ended up competing against Arnold and Lou Ferrigno. Now, there are different stories about why Serge Nubret did not appear more in the movie, since he was obviously one of the biggest bodybuilders in the first part of the 1970s. And in my mind, he was definitely up there with other bodybuilders like Sergio Oliva, Frank Zane, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Franco. But unfortunately, and what is very unfair, is that that's not how the man will go down in history and be remembered. One of the stories I've heard is that Serge Nubret was actually a professional actor in France and had appeared in a lot of movies, and that he simply believed that he should have been compensated and made more money for his appearance in Pumping Iron, which may or may not be true. I don't know if we'll ever really know, but that is definitely a theory. And apparently they did not want to pay him what he had asked for, so that's why he only appeared in the show itself towards the very end of the movie. Now, there's also other stories that might be a little bit more controversial, which is that Serge Nubret apparently appeared in a pornographic movie at some point in his career, and that Joe and Ben Weider apparently did not like that very much because it did not make bodybuilding look good, and apparently he almost got banned from the IFBB. Now, is that true? Again, I'm not really sure, but it's just one of the stories that are sort of kicking around the web. So aside from all the politics, the controversy, and all the bullshit, let's be completely honest and take a look at the man's physique in his prime. Take a look at Serge Nubret. I mean, seriously, this man, in my mind, had it all. If we put him next to Arnold, yes, he did not have the size of Arnold, but nobody did. Arnold was simply bigger than everybody else. But remember, bodybuilding is not just about mass. It's also about conditioning. It's also about being well balanced, athletic, being aesthetic. Bodybuilding is a combination of everything. And in my mind, I would say Serge Nubret definitely had Arnold in several muscle groups. Look at the man's waistline and his abs. There is simply no comparison. Serge Nubret's midsection looked absolutely amazing and one of the best that I've ever seen. I think it's equally as impressive as Frank Zane, that later on became Mr. Olympia from 1977 to 1979. Now, Zane was nicknamed the Chemist, but he was actually smaller than Serge Nubret, and I guess it sort of depends. What physique do you like the most, Frank Zane and his extremely aesthetically pleasing look, or Serge Nubret? It's a tough one for sure. I don't even know if it's fair to compare them, but I certainly think that Serge Nubret could hold his own. And maybe I will even lean towards Serge Nubret. I don't expect all of you guys to agree with me here, but I think the man looked amazing. I mean, look at the man's structure itself. Look at his definition, his V-taper, pretty much everything. And even his face itself, even though it shouldn't have much to do with bodybuilding. But he had this very interesting, great charisma. And that's why they, I guess, used him in the movies as well. Because it wasn't just about the body, but he was also, well, a very handsome fella. Whereas Arnold back in those days, everything about him was squared, including his face, and he looked sort of like a smiling refrigerator, I guess. Whereas Serge Nubret looked more like a modern-day Tarzan. Yes, of course, Arnold had him when it came down to his amazing chest development and his biceps. Nobody could take Arnold in those two muscle groups. And to this day, I still think that Arnold's chest was absolutely amazing when you compare him to modern-day bodybuilders. Hands down. Not trying to take anything away from Arnold though, but Serge Nubret just had a much more, I almost feel like saying glamorous kind of look and feel. All his muscles sort of blended together. Now, bodybuilding is a very hard thing to judge because everybody are looking for different things. It's not like basketball or tennis or soccer where someone scores the most goals or the most points, so therefore they win. Whereas bodybuilding in some ways is much more like an art form, and it simply depends what the judges are focusing on and what they're paying attention to and what they happen to be favoring that year. Whereas we know that Arnold was a big bodybuilder known for his mass, whereas Frank Zane, that was much smaller than Arnold, later on ended up actually becoming three-time Mr. Olympia as mentioned. And then in the 80s everything changed, especially with Lee Haney, and in the 90s with Dorian Yates, which was the birth of the mass monster, and his successors of course would be Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler, and so on and so on. However, Serge Nubret was an absolutely amazing bodybuilder, and he certainly deserved a much greater fate. So anyway guys, I just wanted to do this little video because I think the man definitely deserves all the credit in the world. And like I said, I think he's up there equally as good, or at least almost as good as Arnold. And he really should be remembered as one of the greatest because that's really what he was. Alright guys, so if you like this kind of content, action movies, fitness, bodybuilding, all that good stuff, which is what this channel is all about, and trying to keep up to date with all the latest in the world of entertainment, then please hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.